Turn it up.
From the heart of America, the nation's #1 liberal voice, where truth and common sense rule. This is the Ed Schultz Show, where America comes to talk. And now, from high atop Broadcast Center on the Northern Tier, here's Joel Heitkamp.
Sitting in for Ed Schultz today. Yes, good to be with you right here on the Ed Schultz Show. We have a treat for you right now. It's an honor to have Congressman Ron Kind with us from Wisconsin, a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman Kind, good to have you on the Ed Schultz Show.
Good afternoon, Joel. Getting ready for another polar vortex coming down to visit us.
It'll make news once it gets east,
as
right?
we call it in the upper Midwest. It's
That's
a
right.
cool breeze from Canada that takes the humidity out of the air.
In front of my house is an ice rink, and the kids are having fun, and it was below zero. Congressman, I have to ask you this. I don't know, in all the bag of tricks that you may have of being able to get something done, because you wouldn't be on the Ways and Means Committee if you didn't know how to get things done. But how are you going to get this unemployment issue fixed in that House with that atmosphere?
Well, we have to get it done because it's the right thing to do, it's the fair thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do for our economy, Joel. Listen, for every 3 people out looking for a job right now, there's 1 job posting, so clearly the job market hasn't recovered to the extent where we can absorb these people on unemployment benefits. So why we would decide to cut them off now makes no economic sense whatsoever. It's not fair to them. And a lot of economists say if we don't do this, because of the lack of spending power then in our local economies, it could result in another 250,000 jobs being lost in this recovery, which is the exact opposite of what should be accomplished.
So when did this become partisan? Because, Congressman, you don't get on Ways and Means in your first term. I mean, you've been there a while. And when did this get to be partisan? I've saw Democrats stick up for unemployed workers before. I've saw Republicans stick up for unemployed workers. Why did it have to get partisan?
Yeah, that's a good question because 5 times during President Bush's administration, we extended these long-term unemployment benefits. 5 times. And it wasn't paid for then either. And now suddenly with President Obama sitting in the White House, there's this reluctance to go along with anything that he may suggest, which is very unfortunate. At some point, the United States Congress has to stop acting as a hindrance to economic growth and job creation and find a way where we can better partner with the private sector, get this economy going again. But the actions being taken in Washington is a hurdle to the recovery that we need.
Has the majority party in the House that says we have to have a way to pay for this come up with any solutions? Have they said, okay, because I think it's kind of a fake, we recognize this is needed. I think they just don't want it. But when they say it has to be funded, do they bring anything to the table? They were elected just like you.
Well, nothing serious other than defunding the Affordable Care Act, which there's their old hand that they keep going back to, knowing full well that the president could never accept that. But there are some common sense reform proposals in the budget, including reforming the tax code that could raise another $6 billion to pay for the extension out of unemployment benefits. I mean, all the offshore tax havens that are exploited in the tax code, there should be more serious consideration to look to that and helping struggling families now, but there isn't. And a recent report, Joel, just came out showing that we're literally subsidizing multi-billionaires to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year under the Farm Bill, merely because they're landowners. They're not even farmers. Yeah. That's wrong. That's not right. It should be fixed.
Congressman Ron Kind is our guest here on the Ed Schultz Show. He's from Wisconsin and a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, I have to throw this at you because the efforts made by the left to actually explain this and personalize it, put faces in front of it, saying, look, I have tried to get a job. This is what I'm going through, and actually let people tell their stories. What I'm curious about is not whether that works in my living room, because it does, or whether that works with my friends, because it does. What I'm curious about, in the halls of Congress where you have to work every day, does it work there?
What's curious about this is that by letting these benefits expire, you're going to make it much more difficult for these individuals and families to actually go out and obtain a good job for themselves, because these benefits help pay for that phone bill. And if you're waiting for that phone call back from an interview you took, that's crucial. Or it might pay for some gas in the tank so you can actually show up at an interview for a job prospect. And you take this away from these individuals, and you're going to multiply the degree of difficulty it is now for them to reintegrate into the workforce. And one of the great fears that we have is with the cutoff of these benefits, people are just going to drop out of the labor force and just stop looking. And then you've got the long-term, chronically unemployed individuals that is a subset to this economy. Again, the exact opposite of what we should be trying to accomplish in this Congress. So those who are fighting it and resisting it aren't really thinking through the implications of what this will mean to people and their ability to get a job.
Congressman, what's your litmus test for when you think the benefits have gone enough? How is there a point in the employment rate? Is there a point of length of time? Is there? I mean, at what point does it not meet your test for extending benefits?
Well, I tell you, last Friday we had a very disappointing jobs report coming out, a net 75,000 gain, where we should be at 250 to 300,000 on a monthly basis. That would start to reabsorb, especially the longer-term unemployed in our economy today. And obviously 74,000 is way short of the 250 to 300,000 level that you would like to see on a consistent monthly basis. That's what we should be striving for right now with the policies that we're pursuing. And for the life of me, too, I don't understand why we're not taking advantage of the incredibly low borrowing rates to have a nation infrastructure rebuilding program here in the 21st century. That would help create a lot of jobs overnight while also rebuilding an infrastructure that's in desperate need of repair and modernization. I mean, it's unacceptable. We've got bridges falling down on Americans here in the 21st century. We know we have to do it. It's just a question of timing. Let's do it now when we've got these weak job numbers coming out.
So, Congressman Kind, behind the scenes, when the cameras are off and you're just people talking to people, do you hear any movement on the right on this? Do you hear anything from their caucus that says, I'd like to be there with you if only we could? I mean, what are you hearing from them?
Well, unfortunately, too many of my colleagues, especially in the last few elections, have come to Washington with this my way or no way at all attitude. And the visceral hatred towards government in any aspect or in any form. Their entire mission in life is how do you shut government down? How do you defund programs? How do you basically destroy the institution of Congress? And it makes it very difficult then to find common ground if that's the attitude that you're up against. And so many of these individual members now are coming from districts that make them politically unaccountable. And so they don't have to take any responsibility in regards to how their actions affect the entire country. What we need, I think, are more people that are interested in the national interest rather than their own political self-interest. And unfortunately, there's too much self-interest going on around here.
It goes to what many people always push to me after a statement like the one you just made. And I've never supported term limits. I've always believed that you're up every 2 years.
Yeah.
I can decide whether or not, if I live in Wisconsin, whether or not I want you back from my district or not. But do we get to a point because of all these safe districts where people relook at the whole term limit issue?
I think a more important issue is redistricting process in this country, because it's awfully tough to redistrict North or South Dakota since you have a single delegate coming from those states. But in those states where you've got one-party control and they can draw the political map to their favor, it's led to incredibly safe districts and therefore a lack of any type of political accountability. People are surprised when I tell them that a majority of the House members today have served less than 6 years. A majority of the United States Senate, including your sister, are in their first term. So, in effect, we've had a lot of term limits over the last couple of election cycles and tremendous turnover in Congress. Now, I ask you, in the average American, is this Congress functioning any better today than it was a few terms ago? I think it's progressively gotten worse, and yet we have a lot of new faces around here.
The other thing, Congressman Kind, that people don't realize about that is that when you have that type of turnover that you just described very adequately, that you show that you have all these new faces, people in first terms, people in the House that have been there 6 years or less, what you've done is you've really empowered institutional staff. Yeah. And I think that gets ignored often, Congressman.
Well, you do. You lose a lot of the institutional memory. You lose a lot of that relationship building, which is essential for trust. And ultimately, you need to have a modicum of trust across the aisle in order to reach agreement on some tough political issues. And if you have that constant churning and turnover, you really do empower more bureaucrats, the lifetime staffers, to do all this, to keep things functioning, which is unfortunate. But I just think, what would go a long ways is a redistricting process that took the decisions out of the hands of a politician, put it into a nonpartisan judicial commission to draw the map. Many states have gone this route, and it's working pretty well for them. But we also need to come to grips with Citizens United and the inordinate role of outside, colorful special interest play in the course of these campaigns now, the unlimited funding, the unaccountability, because they can be anonymous, and what that is doing to our democracy, too.
Congressman, it's a privilege. Thanks for coming on the Ed Schultz Show.
Thank you, Joel. Anytime.
You bet. Congressman Ron Kind, he's one of the good ones, folks. When we come back, well, I've got a surprise guest for you right here on the Ed Schultz Show.